sprinkled all through. Zelda even became like a Stepford wife for a while.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that like I love that they range the gamut of like having this very specific like shot in this way, or like looking like Nightmare on Elm Street within a costume, to straight up calling a character Dorian Gray who never ages, and having that be as you know, like I like some of them are very in your face and some of them are very subtle.
Like using the myths and legends that have become classic horror. You know, like Dorian Gray is a character that has shown up in fantasy and sci-fi, you know, outside of the original novel for years. So I think like that, it's like where, you know, if they use the character's name, it's not like appropriation, it's just, you know, using that story.
Yeah.
But then, you know, the other little things are just like little homages to, you know, to horror, which is awesome.
For sure.
Now for my favorite section that I want to talk about is Fuck the Patriarchy.
Fuck the Patriarchy.
This show is all about it. Starting from the very first episode, and they're like completely unapologetic about it.
No metaphor. It's
I love how Spitfire she is about it too.
Yes.
Just, I don't know. Especially like when you were 16, you're just like, well, that is not right. I'm going to do something about it.
Wait a second.
Day one, you know, Sabrina takes that challenge for the top boy. I don't know. It was one of my favorite parts in that whole thing is, you know, she's kind of talking, you know, one day, you know, whenever I'm high priestess and Father Blackwood kind of like women can ascend, but not to high priestess, not to that position, which reminded me of growing up in the Catholic Church. What was always said about like women's involvement in the church. Like, oh, women can get involved and do plenty of things, but they can never become a priest or, you know, bishop or anything like that.
So
they're like, nope, that is forbidden, you know.
No power at all. It's definitely the same. And they're so blatant about it, too. Like, it's like when she's like, well, why couldn't I be top boy, you know, or why isn't there a top girl, or, you know, whatever. And
is that in the rule book?
Yeah.
You know?
And they're just, like, so, like, stunned by it. They're like, why would there be? Why would you want to be? It's really funny.
Well, and even, like, the badass female role models, because I think this is very relatable to, like, real life and, like, the Catholic Church, too. Like, you have, like, Zelda, who's, like, this badass role model, and even she's like, well, that's just, like, the way it is. And you're like, how can you subscribe to
totally buys into
a religion that doesn't value you, you know?
And we saw, like, hints of this through season, you know, 1, where, like, Sabrina would just sort of, like, question those, like, old traditions where, you know, she's like, we talk about free will, but we have to sign our will over to this Lord, you know, like, the Dark Lord. Like, how is this, you know, our freedom and our whatnot? But I think this season they definitely like dial it up to 11.
Yeah, when they came out that first episode, just totally swinging. I remember I had the thought of like, oh, that's what we're gonna do. All right,
yeah,
here for it. Yes,
yeah. They had like hinted last season, I think, but this time, and I do. Speaking of Zelda, especially, I think after she marries Blackwood, and then you know, like. Comes back as like grade A 60s housewife with the outfit and everything too, and you know right away that there's something wrong because it's not Zelda, but that was just like so pointed of what he wants to go back to and what I think parallel with what some people in society would like to go back to.
Well, because even, and I think that's such an important thing too, is because even this witch who supports the status quo and the current church leadership, like, even that's not good enough. Like, he has to strip her power even more. Like, he has complete control of her, you know, even though she had total buy-in already. And that's the thing, is, like, people don't think about that. They're like, oh, yeah, if I go along and I like what we're doing, I like the laws, you know, because they benefit me. They don't realize, I'm talking real life now, they don't realize, they don't care that you're supporting them. It's not going to benefit you in the end either.
Right.
And she, and I think it's, it's like the complete submission that he needs. Because there's a scene early on in the season where they're doing the Passion of Lucifer Morningstar.
Yeah. And,
they mention how Father Blackwood sort of rewrote it a little bit. And he hires Zelda, sort of take over because he's like, some of the other people have a little problem with it. So I want you to take it on. And she like, of course, and reads the play. And she's like, so I've noticed Lilith now has like, essentially no agency, and she's just wandering around, which if anybody like knows the, myth of Lilith, like that's not at all like she walked away from Adam because she wouldn't like submit to Adam. She's a very strong female character. And Father Blackwood has her just like wandering around lost in the woods. And so it's just those little things that like kind of push back against Father Blackwood. That he's just like, you're on my side and you support me, but like that is not even allowed.
Well, and I think too, like if Blackwood wanted, he could have had Sister Jackson or whoever else, but like he specifically goes after Zelda in like the pursuit of making her submit. So it is to tear down a powerful woman.
For sure.
And powerful family.
It's threatening.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting too, speaking of the difference between like religious organization and the religion itself or the deity, like Father Blackwood's twisting of the Church of Satan's like dogma or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what happens when man gets a hold of religion, is he uses it for his own power.
Absolutely.
And we see a little bit of that work against him later in the season.
And I think that especially you see that demonstrated whenever Sabrina and like crew are on that crusade to find her father's
lost texts.
His manifesto, because Blackwood, sort of creates his own for the Church of Judas, and they're like competing with each other for like the audience of the anti-pope. And they're completely separate ideologies. But based on the same, sort of source material.
Right.
And it's just like, how do you take this one source material and interpret it two completely different ways?
Right. Which have divided tons of churches before, and like will continue to. I do have to say that moment with Zelda whenever she like comes back to normal and then looks down at her dress and like, what in Satan's name am I wearing? Is like one of my favorite moments. Like, yeah, she's back. All right.
And jumping to the end, though, again with Zelda, just, because they are taking down the patriarchy, and God damn it, like, it happens. And she sort of takes on that, like, head role of High Priestess. And, she even mentions the Church of Lilith.
The Church of Lilith. Yeah.
Maybe I'll warm
because it does seem like if you're going to have... Well, it is based on Satan, I guess. But, like, if you're going to have, like, the direct opposite of traditional Christianity, you need to worship a woman.
Right, exactly.
It seems important. But, yeah, and then Lilith, I love, Mrs. Wardwall / Lilith and, like, her role all throughout. I love that actress.
Oh, my God, I love that.
I need her around. I was really glad when she walked back out in the end, like, going back to actually being Miss Wardwell.
Yeah.
Lilith gives her back,
She just wakes up after, like, a year.
Yeah.
And she's so confused.
It's really cute. And, like, remembering when I had went back to watch season 1, like, remembering what she started as and then her being, like, the Lilith version was like, oh, shit, that actress is doing a good job.
And because it's completely different. She does such a great job of embodying these two different characters in one body. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then her kind of, too, like, before the ending, where she's just obsessed with being, like, Satan's queen. And finally is like, you know what? Fuck you.
Yeah. Speaking of that actor, like, she just carries so much with her. Like, again, the Passion of Lucifer Morningstar is essentially her story, too.
Yeah.
And she's just kind of, like, watching like the kids play it out on stage, and she, you know, she kind of gets like a little teared up because, you know, I think in that moment she's sort of thinking like, this is where I gave it all away. You know, I gave over my power, I gave over my control, and I'm sort of stuck in this loop. But
yeah, and yet it's still, I mean, she has that, it's her first love. Like, she still has that yearning for his approval at that point in the show.
It's so good. But you know what? He didn't keep his promises to her, so like, fuck him. She's gonna go get what's hers.
Yeah.
I love it.
So that was pretty dope when she became, you know, Queen of Hell.
Yeah.
I was happy.
Hell yes.
What do you guys think about Prudence? Because she kind of takes her own turn of tackling the patriarchy. You have a father.
So I was saying something about this, and like, I don't know, maybe you'll feel this too, Stephanie, but her role is interesting on the show, where they kind of like, when they need a sort of like human enemy, like a peer enemy, then she fills that role.
Yeah.
But then when they need to come together against like a greater evil, then she like comes on, you know, team A. Yeah. But it seems so back and forth that you're like, do you remember when your friends like just 5 minutes ago? Remember when they saved you 5 minutes ago? Like, why are you being mean again?
That was a little problematic to me too. I definitely felt that confusion of like, it felt like they backtracked her character several different times.
Well, and it's not even, there's no character development. They just use her how they like, what's convenient to the storyline. Yeah. And I was saying they do a similar thing with Cheryl in Riverdale.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, okay, we need a peer enemy. Like, Cheryl's going to fill that.
Yeah.
But then like, oh, okay, we're all going to come together against the whatever killer, you know? And then like, she's like, oh my gosh, thanks you guys, and comes around and is friends. But Cheryl, like, her character is just a stuck-up, selfish, rich snob. So it works.
Yeah, like, Cheryl is just kind of a bitch.
Yeah. But she owns it. She's like, oh, I know.
Exactly. But then, like, Prudence, I mean, she definitely has that, like, you know, bitchy character, but at the same time,
like, what's your motivation?
Right.
What do you
like? It's like she wants her father's approval. You know, she wants to be head bitch in charge at the school. Like, but then you know she like develops this grudging respect for Sabrina, but then she stabs her in the back. I don't know. It's
well, then like you're fucking Ambrose, and then you're happy to torture him. Like you just love bloodlust that much. Then let's develop that. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. None of it makes sense.
It's definitely a little confused.
If she's supposed to take pleasure in just torturing anyone, even if she had relations with them before, then we should talk about that. I don't know. I think they just like have no interest in developing her, and I want them to.
Yeah, or like they don't have her arc written out or something, so she's just this like utility character.
Exactly.
Well, and you kind of see that in the end too, when she becomes like a hunter.
Yeah, I'm like, cool, let's do that, I guess.
Like, you know, just whatever you need her to be.
Out of nowhere, Right. Like, the only consistencies are that she cares for her sisters.
Yeah.
And that, you know, she has some good one-liners. That's like the only straightforward thing. But I do love that she finally turns on Father Blackwood. Because, again, too, like, if you're going to be this, like, badass character, why are you having all these issues?
Right. Right, like, you know, and I don't know, I guess that's kind of where they try to focus on her, you know, quote-unquote development. Even though I don't think it worked very well because, like,
it's not convincing.
It felt like they were backtracking. But, like, you know, spending that time, like, trying to get her father's approval or whatever and, like, slowly realizing where she thinks that if she sticks by, you know, Blackwood's side, that, like, this will benefit her in the long run. Where she's, like, looking out for, like, her first. Instead of realizing that, like, no, he's taking everybody else down, which will also take her down.
Yeah.
So she, you know, finally realizes that, like, working with Father Blackwood is also against her own self-interest. But, yeah, like, I agree with you guys where it does seem rather inconsistent over the whole course of Sabrina so far.
And maybe that's what you're talking about, too, with that whole, like, whether we're going to do an episodic, like, one episode or, you know, one like storyline per episode, or if we're going to do an overarching season where I think especially where Prudence gets a little muddled.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of Prudence becoming a hunter, that's sort of like one